Welcome to Bonnie's Beat. This is your host, Bonnie Squires. We're coming to you from Radnor Studio 21, and we always bring you really important guests. And today is one of my favorites. We have with us today Elizabeth Vail, who just came off a very successful campaign for Senator-elect Elizabeth Warren in Massachusetts, even though you're from this neighborhood, right?
Yes, exactly.
And spent a lot of time in this building when it was the Radnor Library, the Wayne Library.
I grew up right here, yep. I know this library, when it was a library.
Now, if I were to write a script for a television series, I think I would write The Life of Elizabeth Vail, because this woman is amazing, and how she got to be the senior advisor and business liaison for Senator-elect Elizabeth Warren would make a very interesting series. It's almost like The West Wing, am I right?
Well, I've been there, but yeah, I don't know if it's that exciting, but thank you. That's a compliment. I appreciate it.
So let's go back to the beginning. You went to Harvard for undergraduate work, and then just the London School of Economics for your graduate work, right?
Yes, yeah, I've studied at the LSE, yeah.
How long were you in London?
So I was there just a year, 1 year.
Did you get to meet the Queen?
No, I didn't, but I ended up marrying an Englishman, so I was over there with him at the time. I never did meet the Queen. Maybe that's in our future, Bonnie, but I haven't met her, no.
Queenie, we call her. Queenie's always carrying that pocketbook. Did you laugh when you were over there and you saw her? She's always with the pocket. What does she need? Keys to the castle?
I know, she has no money. They carry no money, apparently.
No. What could she carry in there?
I don't know.
Maybe a photograph of Diana with a mustache that she drew on it. I don't know. Sorry, I didn't mean to do that, because I thought Diana was amazing.
Yeah, she did an awful lot of good work.
And she also made the royal family seem human, which they hadn't been in centuries, probably.
No.
Yeah. So what did you do with your 2 degrees when you first went out to the workforce?
So I've always had really 2 parallel careers, if you will. One in finance, which paid the bills. I have a couple kids and helped educate them and that sort of thing. But I actually went to the Philadelphia National Bank, PNB. You're a local, you will know that wonderful institution.
Yes.
You can still see the PNB letters on the top of the building, but the bank has been sold and sold and sold, so it doesn't exist. So I left Harvard and went into its training program, which was wonderful. Like an MBA, you get paid in effect to get in
PNB Bank.
Yeah, PNB, the Philadelphia National Bank.
What could they possibly have taught you that you didn't know already?
Oh my God, I knew nothing. At Harvard, you learn nothing terribly. I loved Harvard, but you don't learn very much that's practical. For example, when I was there, they never taught accounting. So PNB was terrific. And I was 22. I went there in their training program. And I spent a lot of years there, 17 years actually at the Philadelphia National Bank. And then I spent 17 years at Morgan Stanley, actually Miller, Anderson, and Sherrod, that was acquired by Morgan Stanley.
And you were the managing director.
I ended up as a managing director at Morgan Stanley.
And how many men were working for you?
Well, there were, let's just say there were not a lot of women on Wall Street or at Morgan Stanley. It's a great firm, but when I was the managing director, I think that the number of women, the percentage was 7% of the managing directors
7%
were women. Yeah.
And the board was probably a smaller percentage, right?
Oh yeah. Well, I say cavalierly, but I suspect it was. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Catalyst is this wonderful nonprofit out of New York, and every year they issue a report, the percentage of women on Fortune 500 corporate boards, Fortune 100, heading up major corporations. And it gets more depressing every year.
I don't think we make a lot of headway in that space. I think we have in other spaces. But yes, there were not a lot of women. I mean, I loved it, but yeah, very male.
What's the funniest thing you remember that a man did when he goofed in dealing with you as a woman instead of as the managing director?
Oh, interesting. Well, I won't really go into those stories because they're not very appropriate for television, but I will say that I got quite lonely being one of very few women, and I actually resigned and took another job. I accepted another job, and the head of my part of the firm came to see me and said to me,
Right?
right, he said to me, who shall remain nameless, said to me, how can you leave? Well, we can't have you leave. We'll fix it, whatever the problem is. Can you tell me what it is? And I said, I'm lonely. Actually, is what the problem is, without any women. And he said, how can you be lonely? We pay you all this money. And I remember the verbatim quote, how can you be lonely? Which was a hard one to answer, as I just, oh my gosh, where do I begin? But we talked a little bit more, and I said, I really miss women. So they actually very kindly created a group of women for me to manage. Pulled in some women who were near me in various other roles. And so it was very gracious and very, a real example, actually, of keeping your strong women or your women together. But yeah, I remember that comment thinking, oh, I guess we're differently motivated.
Well, it's very interesting because more and more I'm seeing articles about the difference in the mindset between men and what motivates them and women and what motivates them. And I saw you in action in, I guess it was 2007. There was a group of women attorneys. I don't know how I get involved with all the women lawyers, but they always invite me to.
That's great. Well, you're great.
They were Democrats, and you were there. I think that's how I first met you, as a matter of fact.
Really?
And I remember somebody handed you a bio of Valerie Jarrett, who was the keynote speaker, and you got to introduce her, and that's the first time you had met her.
Yes.
And then it must have been magic, because the next thing I know, I'm getting emails from you from the White House where you're working for Valerie Jarrett, like next door to President Obama. And it's interesting because you were the earliest person I knew on the Obama camp, followed shortly by Senator Bob Casey.
Yes, we were early. I was early.
But I know his rationale why he didn't go for Hillary. He was still mad at Bill Clinton because they didn't let his father talk at the Democratic convention.
Interesting.
Yes, but also, they had a lot in common, he and Obama. And I when I saw your picture in the Washington Post, sitting in the Oval Office with Valerie Jarrett and the president, I said, oh boy, isn't that amazing?
You're great.
So what was it that attracted you to both Valerie and then to Obama?
And to Obama.
Especially when in your household, you had conflicting views from your husband and your daughter, what should I say?
That's right. My husband's a Republican, firm Republican, and my daughter was for Hillary when she ran in the primary here in 2008. So it was quite an interesting household. But, well, really, the way I got started, and that was really my other career, my second career. I mentioned I had sort of two parallel careers. I had worked for John Hines way back in the Senate.
Of blessed memory.
Yep.
He was so remarkable.
Oh, wonderful man.
Republicans like him don't exist in the Republican Party anymore. I was just at the Pennsylvania Society weekend, and independent of each other, Governor Thornburg tells me, Bonnie, I'm so mad at Pat Toomey for voting against the UN International Treaty on Disability Rights. And then a few minutes later, I'm talking to Governor Ridge, whom I adore, and he says, Bonnie, I'm so angry with Pat Toomey for voting against the Disability Rights Treaty. And when I went back to the table and reported to my husband what these two venerable Republicans had said, he said, but Bonnie, they're from a different generation of Republicans.
Right.
There aren't any like that left in the party.
I bet they'll grow some. I think they might have to grow some now.
Well, they'll have to.
Yeah. But John Hines was terrific man, and I worked for him, and he happened to be on
Teresa was wonderful, and she was one of the leaders of the Soviet Jewry Crusade.
She's how I know Elizabeth Warren. She's how I know Elizabeth Warren, which is another story. But so I worked for John Hines, loved him, met Bill Bradley on the finance committee because Hines worked on banking and finance, and I worked on his work in that area. Bill Bradley was on that committee, and I got to become a friend of his when I was just 27. So I've always loved politics. That's my degree at Harvard, was government. So I sort of followed these parallel careers, and when Bill Bradley ran for president, I took a leave of absence from Morgan Stanley and traveled with him. Went to Ohio and New Hampshire and all over, and so worked for him. I like to work for a person. Obviously, I care about their stands on issues, but I need to get up in the morning for my person, and Bill Bradley was my person. And when he went down, in March of 2000, I was very sad. and I went back to Morgan Stanley, and I did my, I waited really for my next person in politics. And I met, and Ed Rendell's a great, great friend, and he was my person for a while. When he ran for governor, we changed a lot of
A
Republicans.
Nation of Wusses. I gave a rave review to that
great.
book. He's wonderful.
Ed, love Ed.
Wonderful.
But then I just, by happenstance, I met then Senator Obama at a dinner. And Jerry Lenfest and I, his friend, actually had gone to have dinner, had gone to a dinner. It was one of Peter Buttenwieser's dinners. And we were seated with this man who I didn't know at all, Senator Obama. And it must have been 06, I'm thinking, or maybe early 07. And I just loved him. And I said, this is my new person. So then I sort of threw my house, so to speak, at the campaign. My kids were gone, and Pennsylvania mattered for once, as you know, in that primary.
Yes, very much so.
So I really just contributed my house, if you will, and my cars. And
A very large house, because she took in 75 Obama campaign workers. I don't know where she put them. Nobody has that many bedrooms. Not even you, Elizabeth.
Well, it was we had 15 at a time. We only had 15 at a time.
Only, quote unquote. Only 15 at a time. I love it.
So much fun. They came through and were placed in other parts of the state. So that's how we got up to 75. But it was never more than 15. But we had Jeremy Byrd, who actually ran the Pennsylvania primary. And now ran in this last election all of the field effort for Obama. Jeremy Byrd has now become quite a big and very effective figure. But he moved into our house in February and stayed 2 months until the April 21st primary, and brought all his lieutenants. And they ended up in the general those people ran in the general election, Ohio, Missouri, Florida. So they sort of incubated themselves in our house in those 2 months in the primary. It was fascinating. And that's how I met Valerie, because I actually was asked to co-chair Pennsylvania for Women, along with the wonderful Molly Turlovich, if you know her. And then I wrote little pieces for his Economic Policy Committee, although I was still at Morgan Stanley.
Little pieces. I love it. I was with Hillary the night she won the Pennsylvania primary.
Oh, wow.
I was in the VIP section at the hotel downtown, and that was such heady. And the night before, I had been at the big rally with Hillary, Bill, and Chelsea at the Palestra on Penn's campus, my alma mater. But as soon as Hillary said, okay, she threw in the towel when she saw what happened in Iowa and other places, and she said, I want you all to support Obama. I didn't have any problem supporting Obama, because the year before, he had been the keynote speaker at the National Education Association that was at the Convention Center in Philadelphia. And a friend of mine had gotten me press passes, and I was sitting right up front, and this brilliant orator, he was so inspirational. But when I went up to shake hands with him afterwards, I looked at him and I said, he looks like a bar mitzvah boy. He's so incredibly young. I'm sticking with Hillary. I had been with Hillary in 1995 in Beijing for the UN conference.
She's
Fourth World
amazing.
Conference
She's
on Women.
amazing.
And she's been the best Secretary of State the country has
fabulous.
ever had.
Fabulous.
So when she runs in 2016, then you'll campaign for her,
Oh,
right?
well, I'll be there with you, believe me. I think she's fabulous. And the only problem with that election was we had two terrific candidates.
Terrific.
Sometimes we have zero, but we had two. So it was
Yes.
a hard decision, and I think I admire her hugely. So yes, I'm with you on her.
So when Valerie Jarrett first asked you to come to work in the White House, I don't think you had to think long and hard about that, right?
No, it was really good timing for me, because my kids had grown up. They were in college, both of them, and I loved Obama, as I said, and Valerie and I really just hit it off. There's a nice chemistry when I met her, just a lovely chemistry. So I said absolutely, and it was time for me to leave Morgan Stanley. I was there 17 years, which is a long time. A great career. But anyway, so yes, I went along happily with alacrity, but I didn't realize what I was getting into.
There's no rest for the weary in the White House, I understand, right?
Unbelievable.
Doesn't matter who's the president. Well, maybe under George W. Bush, who took a nap and had to go to bed early and had to go to the gym.
Right.
Maybe people got to take some time off under him, but not under anybody else, especially not under Obama.
Well, it was a hard time, because, as you remember, it was just after during the financial meltdown, and my job was
Which one? Which one?
Yeah, which one? Well, it was sort of in the middle of a long series, I suppose. It was, he won in November of 2008. And
Ouch.
Yeah, and Morgan Stanley, where I still was full-time employed, had pretty much, well, it pretty much went under and became a commercial bank. It didn't quite go under, but it in fact became a commercial bank so that it was, sort of more secure. It was a tough time. So when I went to the White House, I was the business liaison, and I started something called the White House Business Council for the President, and I was executive director of this White House Business Council. And he and Valerie had handpicked the 12 agencies that were most relevant to business. And he asked me to start this council and head it. And the point of it was to communicate a consistent message from the President through the agencies to the business community and back again. So I did that. And that just meant it was exhausting, only because, the world had kind of, or was ending.
It was.
Very tough time. And so I worked very hard, actually, on what became Dodd-Frank, which was the Wall Street Reform and Consumer Financial Protection Act, which created, as a centerpiece, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau.
Which Obama had planned to appoint Elizabeth Warren as the head of this consumer protection, right?
Right. Well, I don't know if he'd planned to do that, actually. I don't know if he'd planned to do that. She had hoped that he would do that, and many of us hoped that he would do that. But what he did, which was terrific, was, and actually, just to back up a second, this was Elizabeth Warren's dream and her idea to create this consumer, what became a consumer bureau, and frankly, one of the president's purest legacies. And to her great credit, what she dreamed up, we ended up getting 95% of.
That's amazing.
Which is shocking in that contentious Capitol Hill. So Elizabeth Warren is massively effective and across the aisle, which people don't realize enough. But in any case, I worked very hard on that. But at the time, I would get 60 emails an hour, myself and my one intern. And at the time of bill signings, which Dodd-Frank was...
60 emails an hour?
Yeah, and during bill signings, I would get 80 emails an hour. 80, and it was just completely crazy. So had I known, I think I would have had the courage to go, but it was a phenomenal, wonderful experience.
What was the most exciting thing that happened while you were in the White House?
Oh, that's a great question. Let's see. There's so many. Obviously, one was the accomplishment of getting Dodd-Frank passed, which really was a remarkable and very exciting, and it was a huge privilege to work on that.
We're going to miss Barney Frank.
Oh, I love Barney Frank, but she'll step in and be a really significant figure. And Massachusetts grows so many amazing candidates, so I think you haven't seen the end of them. But probably the most exciting thing I ever did, and it's sort of different from working on legislation, was traveling on Air Force One and Marine One with the president, which is magical. I will tell you, it's like out of James Bond. The airplane and the helicopter too with him was pretty special. So I highly recommend that. It's hard to get on there, but it was really special.
I hope you have a lot of pictures.
I do have pictures, actually. He has a cool bedroom in there, and he's a cool, there's a great big conference room. There's an Oval Office in the sky. And up at the pilots, I went up to the second, there's a stairway up to the pilots, which was fascinating.
I guess the president is allowed to use electronic devices while he's in the airplane, unlike the rest of us in the commercial airplane, right?
The other thing is, they don't tell you to sit down when you're landing or taking off. It's very strange. I just realized they never say, you put your seatbelt on and we're landing. No, you just land. But it's also cool. You can order whatever you want for lunch. Anyway, that was really fun. And then I landed, and then from Andrews Air Force Base, I was on the helicopter, Marine One, with him, which was magical. I remember you fly right by the Washington Monument. It comes up like a big white wall. And then just then you sit down on the South Lawn. And he was talking to me. We were right across from each other like this. And the sun set behind him. And we landed on the South Lawn. And there's the White House and the sun setting. I mean, it's a moment
glorious.
We'll never forget.
Absolutely glorious. Oh, my goodness.
And then another story I'll tell you is there's such a history there, and you're immensely conscious of the history in that space, the West Wing and the East Wing. And in the executive office building where I had my office, David Gergen came by one day and said, "Oh, this is my office. This is where I wrote or drafted Richard Nixon's resignation letter when I was 28." And then another day, Peggy Noonan came by and said, "Oh, this was my office, 114. I wrote speeches here for Nixon." I mean, it's just amazing.
I remember being very excited. I was invited to Pennsylvania Day when Clinton was president. And it was terrific because when Clinton trains those steely blue eyes on you and shakes your hand, even though there are 1,000 people in this giant room,
Yes.
everybody else disappears, and he makes you believe you're the only person he's interested in.
Yes.
He is just remarkable.
Yes. Oh, yes. Absolutely. I've met him just once or twice, and I had the same exact reaction.
Yeah.
Wow.
Every fundraiser, everything, small parties, large parties. He's really, and he's more popular now than he was even as president.
Oh, yes.
It's amazing to see that.
You watched, I was there at the Charlotte Convention, and then he had a little party after that amazing speech, and we all went along to see him again. He's once in a lifetime.
Yeah, just absolutely magic. But Obama, we won't mention his performance in the first debate.
Okay,
again.
good. Let's omit
because
that.
the next morning, I'm watching television, and he bounded up on a stage, and he was speaking to a group of college kids on a campus, and he was his old, energetic, high energy, brilliant self. And I said, "What? Yeah, he must have been half asleep the night before, because it just nobody recognized him the night before." And then, of course, the next two debates, he was absolutely sensational, spectacular, you know. And what did your husband say when you had another winner on your hands?
Elizabeth Warren?
No,
or the second presidential?
The second Obama.
You know, he's very gracious. I have a wonderful husband. I give him gigantic high marks, and I owe him actually for a lot of my career. He has been immensely supportive of me, and says, you must follow your dreams. You have these dreams, and this is the time to do it. So I give him a lot of credit. I mean, he was happy with all those Obama people in the House. And I think he admires President Obama hugely. He may not agree with all of his policies, especially his economic policies, but you know, he admires him hugely.
It's because you were in Massachusetts for a whole year. Connecticut's pretty close to Massachusetts, right? So I didn't want to let go of the feeling we still have about Sandy Hook in Newtown, Massachusetts. And because you've got connections all through New England, and I think your father was born in Massachusetts,
yes.
and you know, and you were all over the state, went to school there, and Connecticut is such a teensy little state. My goodness. The most astonishing thing to me was Wayne LaPierre. 1 week later, the executive director of the National Rifle Association gets up, and his answer to combat violence and the slaughter of children, more guns. I could not believe it. I could not believe it.
Shocking.
I mean, they're so tone deaf, the NRA. I mean, we know they're supported by the gun manufacturers and the gun show people and whatever, but how could they? I mean, he didn't even say how terrible it was that, you know, 26 innocent people in an elementary school.
Oh, I know. Just unbelievable. Just devastating. And we all have children or grandchildren or neighbors who are children, and it just was shocking and horrifying.
And Newtown will never be the same.
No.
Never.
No.
I remember many, many years ago in Life magazine. You know how long ago that was?
I remember it well.
Do you remember the town in Wales called Aberfan? And the slag heap, which was the top of a mountain, it was all the leftover stuff from the coal mines. The slag heap suddenly slid down into the village and decimated the schoolhouse and killed every child in the village because they were all in school. And that was the end of a generation. So that town would never be the same.
No, but at least that was an act of God. That was devastating too, but different. Well, Elizabeth Warren, who I now work for, still actually, has always been in favor of the renewal of the assault weapons ban.
Good for her.
And her opponent, Scott Brown, voted against it. Now I gather he's changed his mind, fortunately, but she actually is very close to a man up in Massachusetts named John Rosenthal, who maintains the huge billboard. You probably don't know it, but it's at Fenway Park. It's the largest billboard in the country, right at Fenway on the Mass Pike. And it identifies the number of children who've died in the last 2 years because of gun violence. And so he's been a national leader. Actually, was just on MSNBC with Ed Rendell and Michael Smerconish. So Elizabeth is right there with him in terms of the assault weapons ban, and she came right out in favor of that again when this horrible tragedy occurred.
I had not realized that Senator Bob Casey, whom I adore, had quietly been against the assault ban renewal, and he was front page news, recently, saying he changed his mind because of Newtown, and he will now and went on television to say, "I will vote for that assault weapons ban."
Yeah, it's obviously tough issue with the Second Amendment, which is one of our principal amendments, and of course Pennsylvania. I was listening to Ed Rendell say, I believe he said that we have the second highest proportion of guns for the population behind Texas. So there are a lot of hunters in the state, and that's a different issue. But in any case, this is not my area of expertise at all, so I don't mean to get into it.
I have a very dear friend who goes hunting season every year, and I give him the same blessing every year. May you catch nothing but a cold. Because I saw Bambi when I was in 8th grade, and sobbing hysterically. Everybody was in the auditorium. We were all 8th graders, and ever since then, every time they do a culling of deer, they like to clean it up.
Yeah, it's a tough issue, and I'm just glad that it has some attention now for a terrible reason, but it will, I think, be attended to.
Well, it certainly has changed the whole public discourse. There never was a public discourse on stamping out gun violence before, with all the horrible things that went on. Going back to Sylvia Sechrist, who shot and killed 17 people in the Springfield Mall many, many years ago. The parents knew she was dangerous, but Pennsylvania in 1970, and I remember lobbying against that bill, said you can't keep somebody in a mental institution until they've threatened or done something awful to themselves or to somebody else. So after she killed all those people, then they could put her in a mental hospital.
Wow.
So.
Well, it's not my area at all. I mean, I just watch it as a citizen, and it was just devastating. But let's hope there's some sorts of work towards solutions.
Hopefully, since they can't get together on the fiscal cliff, by the time this airs, I'm hoping that there will have been a solution, because even my mother, who's 97, says, my taxes are going to go up January 1st. I just know it. I said, Mother, it's a game the Republicans are playing. You'll see, because they don't want to be held responsible for the entire middle class to have to pay more taxes starting January 1st. Am I right?
Oh, yeah. I'm sure that's the case. Yep.
And what's Elizabeth Warren's answer for this?
She actually agrees with the president. You can imagine they are very similar in their thinking in almost all policy areas. She's not in favor. She's not in favor of taxing the 97% of us, the 98% of small businesses, and not those who are wealthier. She is, in general, all for fairness and equity and transparency and a level playing field. So, you see that in all of her work. As you know, she created the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. And by the way, that was instead of, not in addition to, the 7 agencies governing consumer financial protection. A lot of people used to say to us in Washington, oh my God, another federal agency, this is terrible, more bureaucracy. And I really like to remind people it's instead of the 7. It was sort of a hodgepodge of 7 agencies, which were, so that took the place of. But anyway,
and no agency talks to another agency, right?
Well, they do through our White House Business Council. But in any case, it's a streamlining and efficiencies of government that she created. But in any case, typical of her hallmark is to create. She'll see a problem and create a solution very efficiently. She's immensely visionary and practical. So we created there, and now they are continuing to, a 2-page credit card agreement, a 2-page mortgage shopping sheet, a 2-page student loan shopping sheet. Elizabeth was the first person really to shine a lot of spotlight on the $1 trillion student loan debt market, and to give students a tool to compare existing options in terms of risks, prices, and make them comparable. So, I'm just giving you some examples of, and then, of course, the Super PAC deal that she orchestrated with Scott Brown in Massachusetts so that they kept the Super PAC money out of Massachusetts. Vintage Elizabeth Warren. There's a problem with campaign finance reform. we'll have a deal to keep the super PAC money out, which was very effective.
I hope you have a wonderful gown for her inauguration.
Well,
and for Obama's,
Yeah.
and it's been a pleasure.
Thank
We've
you.
been speaking with Elizabeth Vail, who is a senior advisor and a whiz with finances,
No.
and she's partially responsible for the success of Senator-elect Elizabeth Warren, soon to be senator. Thank
Yes.
you so much, Elizabeth.
Thank you, Bonnie. This is terrific. Appreciate it very much.